You know, I've been on this earth for 99 years. 9 trips around the sun. I've seen the Great Depression. I've seen every bubble, every crash, every financial disaster you can imagine. And you want to know the most heartbreaking thing? What I've witnessed is, it is not the poor struggling to survive. That is obvious. That is expected. No, the real tragedy is this. The thing that keeps me up at night, even at my age, is watching brilliant, hardworking, educated people sprint on a treadmill their entire lives and end up exactly nowhere. I am talking about doctors, lawyers, engineers, corporate executives, people who are absolutely razor sharp in their fields, people pulling down $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year. These people should be wealthy. They should be financially independent. They should be sleeping like babies at night. But here is what actually happens. They hit 65, they retire, and their bank accounts they've got mountains of debt. They're living on a pitiful pension, wondering where the hell all their money went. Now you might be thinking, Charlie, were they just stupid? Did they not work hard enough? Were they unlucky? None of the above. The real problem is this, and this is what I am going to explain today. They spent their entire lives obsessively buying things. Things I call fake assets. They thought they were building wealth. They were actually building a pile of future bills. They thought they were investing. They were being harvested. And the beautiful thing about this scheme, if you are the one doing the harvesting, is that it is all completely legal. It is wrapped up in nice packaging. It is sold to you by people in expensive suits, people who look trustworthy. 99% of the middle class has fallen into this trap. It is an elaborate system designed by financial institutions, by advertisers and so-called conventional wisdom. Today, I am not going to tell you something. How to make more money. Onion can tell you that. Work harder, start a side hustle, learn to code. Boring. Useless. What I am going to do is show you something, how to plug the 5 massive holes, the holes that are bleeding your wealth dry. Because here is what nobody tells you. It doesn't matter if there are giant holes in the bottom. Are you ready? Good, let's invert this problem and expose these wealth killers. Before we tear into these fake assets, we need to establish one fundamental concept. And I say fundamental for a reason, because business schools have taken something dead simple and made it impossibly complex. What is an asset? Go to Harvard Business School and they'll show you balance sheets. They'll give you formulas. They'll tell you that your house is an asset, your car is an asset, hell, even your designer handbag is supposedly an asset. That is horseshit. Here is my definition, or rather, the definition that rich people actually use. A real asset is something that puts money in your pocket. Whether you are working or not, it generates cash flow, dividends, interest, rent, royalties. It produces money while you sleep. A fake asset is something different. It takes money out of your pocket every single month. You are paying interest, maintenance fees, insurance, management fees. It is a vampire on your bank account. Now, most people's tragedy. And I've watched this happen thousands of times. They spend their entire life savings buying things that drain their money, while believing they're accumulating wealth. It is like trying to fill a bathtub while there are 5 massive holes in the bottom. You are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You are making great money. The water's pouring in, but it never accumulates. The moment you stop working, the tub is dry. That is why doctors go bankrupt. That is why lawyers end up broke. They buy the big house in the nice neighborhood. They lease the BMW or the Mercedes. They get sold these shiny financial products, products that promise the moon. And every month, every single month, they're working to pay for these things. They think they own these assets. They don't. The assets own them. They're slaves. Now, I've built considerable wealth in my life, not because I am smarter than everyone else, though I am pretty smart, but because I have an absolute hatred, a visceral hatred of fake assets. I don't waste money on things that depreciate. I don't waste money on things that require me to feed them like pets. I only love productive assets, things that grow on their own and mail me checks. See's candies, that is a productive asset. Every Valentine's Day, every Christmas, people buy chocolates, and I get richer. Coca-Cola stock, productive asset. Billions of people around the world drink that sugar water, and dividends flow into my account. That is what we're after. Today I am going to expose 5 wolves in sheep's clothing, 5 things that disguise themselves as security, lifestyle, or investment opportunities. If you don't cut them from your financial life, you will end up broke. I don't care how much you earn. You'll end up with nothing. Why is it so hard for brilliant people to understand this? Because they're trained to be smart in their field, not smart about money, and the financial industry knows this. They exploit it ruthlessly, ready to see what is killing you. Let's go. The first fake asset I refuse to touch, and I hope to God you'll avoid it, is probably sitting in your driveway right now. I am talking about constantly upgrading to new cars, especially luxury vehicles. Now, this is probably the hardest one for people to resist, and I understand why. It is not marketed as an instead, it is sold as a symbol of success, a reward for your hard work. You deserve this. The advertisers tell you your neighbor just bought a new Tesla. Your coworker just leased a BMW. You start feeling like a failure. If you are driving a 10-year-old Honda, so what do? You take out a loan for $70,000. You sit in that car, you smell that new car smell, and you feel successful. From a financial standpoint, this is one of the single worst decisions you can make. And I am going to prove it to you with math. First, new cars violate the fundamental definition. The definition of an asset. They don't generate cash flow. They devour it. But worse than that, they have a fatal characteristic. A characteristic that should terrify anyone. Anyone who understands numbers. Instant depreciation. The second you drive that, it loses 10 to 20% of its value. You've done nothing. You haven't even driven it home yet. And your $70,000 car is now worth $56,000. Your money just evaporated into thin air. Now, if you finance this car, and most people do, you've done something even more asinine. You are paying interest on something guaranteed to lose value. You are using tomorrow's money to buy something that is shrinking in value today. It is double financial suicide. But wait, there is more. Luxury cars come with expensive insurance, premium maintenance, high-grade gasoline, all of it, every penny, is cash flowing out of your pocket into the pockets of the car manufacturer, the dealership, the insurance company. But here's the killer. Most people never see opportunity cost. Let me run you through a calculation. This is something I think about constantly at Berkshire. It is why I drove the same old car for so many years. Warren still drives a modest car. Why? Because we understand this math. Here is the scenario. You buy a new $50,000 car every 5 years. Pretty typical for a successful professional, right? You think you are only spending $50,000. Wrong, dead wrong. Let's say instead you bought a reliable used car for $10,000. Something boring, something that works, and you took the remaining. and invested it in an S&P 500 index fund. Historical average return is about 10% annually. I know the market doesn't go up straight, but over long periods, this is the reality. How much would you have in 30 years? $700,000. That one car decision, that one stupid decision to buy new instead of used, cost you $700,000 in future wealth. Now think about this. That $700,000 could have been your retirement fund. Your kid's college education, fully paid, the foundation of your financial independence. But that is just one car. What if you do this 5 times in your life, for the sake of maintaining appearances, for that vanity metal box that does nothing but transport you from point A to point B? You've burned millions of dollars in potential wealth. Millions. This is the fundamental reason. The middle class can't accumulate wealth. They make good money, then they take that money and funnel it directly to car manufacturers, banks, and insurance companies. They've turned themselves into a revolving door. Money comes in, money goes out, nothing sticks. I see young people, smart kids, first real job, finally have some savings, and the first thing they do is buy a fancy car. They think it is a reward, an investment in themselves. It is not an investment, it is consumption, expensive, wealth-destroying consumption. There are 2 types of people in this world. People who want to look rich. They drive Mercedes, they wear Rolex watches, but their bank accounts are empty. First economic storm comes through, they're underwater, and people who want to be rich, they drive Toyotas, they live in modest houses, but they own massive amounts of productive assets. They don't need to prove anything to anybody because they have real freedom. People used to mock me, Charlie, you are a billionaire. Why are you driving that piece of junk? You know what I told them? Because I understand compound interest. I am not going to waste millions of dollars on depreciating metal that sits in my driveway. So if you want to get rich, really rich, not fake Instagram rich, step 1 is to quit your obsession with new cars. Treat your car as a tool. It is a tool to get you to work. That is it. It is not a status symbol. It is not an extension of your identity. Buy a reliable used car. Drive it until it dies. Take every dollar you save and put it into real assets. Assets that generate cash flow. That is the first brick in plugging your wealth drain. Now, why do so many smart people fail at this? Because they're trying to keep up with their neighbors. They're playing a game they can't win. And the financial industry is right there, ready to finance that stupidity at 6% interest. Let's move to the second wealth killer. This one is even more insidious because it is sold to you as protection. The second fake asset I refuse to touch, and I believe this is the single biggest wealth destroyer for the American middle class, is whole life insurance. This includes universal life, variable life, dividend paying policies, indexed universal life, all these complicated products that claim to give you both insurance protection and investment growth. 90% of American families fall into this trap. It is also how countless financial advisors make their living, and that should tell you something right there. The sales pitch is absolutely perfect. I'll give them credit, they've refined this over decades. The agent sits down with you, he is wearing a nice suit, he looks trustworthy, and he says you need life insurance anyway, right? You've got a family to protect, so why not buy a policy that also accumulates cash value? It protects your family, it forces you to save, it grows tax-free, and when you retire, you can even withdraw the money for retirement income. It has got the safety of insurance. That sounds perfect, doesn't it? It is mathematical magic. Except it is not magic. It is mathematical poison. Let me explain why. And pay attention because this is important. Insurance is designed to transfer risk. It is consumption. You are paying for protection. Investment is designed. You are buying assets that grow. Mixing these two together is like buying a vehicle that is supposed to be both a car and a boat. It sucks on the road, it sucks in the water, and it costs way more than buying a good car and a good boat separately. Here is the dirty secret that insurance salespeople will never tell you in the first year. 50 to 100% of your premium goes directly into the agent's pocket as commission. Think about that for a second. You think you are investing $10,000 for your future, but $5,000 to $10,000 of that, half to all of it, goes to the salesperson. Immediately, your cash value account, it is empty, or nearly empty, for the next 10 to 20 years. The insurance company deducts massive management fees, mortality costs, and corporate profits before they trickle a tiny portion of your premium into that investment account. It is like running a marathon with a 50-pound sandbag on your back. You can run as hard as you want. You are never going to win the race. Let me give you a real example. I have a friend, smart guy, engineer, who bought whole life insurance at age 38. He paid $5,000 every year for 30 years. By the time he retired at 68, he'd put in $150,000 total. How much? $170,000. In 30 years, he made less than $20,000. That doesn't even beat inflation. His purchasing power actually shrank. This is the hallmark of a fake asset. It promises you the future, while secretly eating your present. Now let's do the smart thing. What if he'd bought term life insurance instead? Term life insurance is pure protection. No investment component. No cash value. You are just buying protection, and that is it. For the same coverage, term life would have cost him maybe $500 a year, maybe less. So he takes the remaining $4,500 and invests it in a Simples and P500 index fund every single year. After 30 years, how much would he have? Not $170,000. $900,000, that $700,000 difference, where'd it go? It went into the insurance company's skyscraper, the CEO's compensation package, the agent's luxury vacation, management fees, overhead. It is a massive wealth transfer from your pocket to the financial institution's pocket. At Berkshire Hathaway, we own insurance companies. I know exactly how this works. And I am telling you, don't be on the wrong side of this transaction. Here is my rule, and it is simple. If you need protection, buy the cheapest term life insurance you can find. If you need investment, buy stocks or index funds. Never try to mix them together. And I mean never for most middle-class families. Whole life insurance isn't an asset. It is a decades-long, expensive, inefficient drain on your capital. It exploits your fear of the future. It exploits your lack of financial knowledge. And it locks you into a contract that is guaranteed to underperform inflation. If you want to get rich, you need to learn to say no to products that sound too perfect. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. We need to invest in that are actually efficient, not feed greedy middlemen who add no value. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Charlie, so no cars, no whole life insurance. What about gold? That is safe, right? That is what my grandfather told me. Oh boy, let's talk about gold. The third fake asset I refuse to touch, and I am going to make some enemies here, is gold and its modern, even stupider cousin, cryptocurrency. Now, people get very emotional about this. They'll jump up and say, Charlie, gold is a hard asset. It has been money for 5,000 years. It is a safe haven. And the crypto people are even worse. It is the currency of the future. You just don't understand the technology, old man. Let me tell you what I understand. I understand that gold and cryptocurrency share one fundamental characteristic. They are non-productive assets, or to put it more bluntly, they're expensive pet rocks that sit there looking shiny. Let me explain the difference between productive and non-productive assets, because this is crucial. If you buy an acre of farmland, what happens? Even if you never sell it, that land produces corn or wheat or soybeans every single year. It creates value. If you buy stock in a great company like Coca-Cola, what happens? Every quarter, that company pays you a dividend. It is producing value for you continuously. But if you buy an ounce of gold or 1 Bitcoin, what happens? Nothing. You can lock it in a safe, you can stare at it, you can touch it, you can tell yourself how smart you are. But 10 years later, 100 years later, it is still just 1 ounce of gold. It doesn't birth baby gold. It doesn't pay you interest or dividends. It just sits there. And you are paying storage fees or management fees for the privilege of owning it. This means your only reason for buying gold or crypto is that you hope, you pray, that some greater fool comes along later and pays you more than you paid. That is not investing. That is the greater fool game. It is speculation. It is gambling. Let me destroy your illusions with some actual data, Manny. People buy gold to hedge against inflation. Sounds reasonable, right? But look at the long-term numbers. Yes, gold has gone up over the decades, but if you'd put that same money into productive assets, into the stock market, into businesses, your returns would be 10 times, 20 times, even 100 times higher. Why? Because gold can't harness the power of compound interest. It can only sit there and hope that currencies debase enough to make it more valuable. But companies can innovate. They can expand. They can take their profits and reinvest them to create exponential growth. That is the magic of capitalism. That is the magic of owning productive assets. Now let's talk about cryptocurrency, because this deserves its own special condemnation. I've called Bitcoin rat poison. Some people got offended. Good. They should be offended because it is an insult to rat poison. Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, zero, none. It is not a currency. You can't go to Walmart and buy groceries with it. It is not a commodity. It has no industrial use. It is purely a digital token. That has been pumped up by mass hysteria, speculation. And let's be honest, a lot of fraud. I've watched young people, smart kids, who could be building real wealth, dump their savings into Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, whatever the latest scam coin is. They look down on stocks as boring. That is for old people. Charlie, that is outdated. And then the tide goes out, the mania fades, and they're left holding a meaningless string of code that is worth 90% less than what they paid. You want to know something? Look at the Forbes billionaire list. Look at the truly wealthy people in the world. How many of them got rich hoarding gold in their basement? None. How many got rich speculating on cryptocurrency? A tiny handful. And most of to other people not holding it. The real billionaires own businesses. They own Walmart, they own Amazon, they own Berkshire Hathaway, they own productive assets that create value and generate cash flow. So if you want real wealth, lasting wealth, not lottery, ticket wealth, get your money out of these pet rocks. Find assets that work for you. Find assets where even if the stock exchange closed for 10 years, you wouldn't panic. You'd actually be happy because you are collecting dividends and watching the business grow. That is the fundamental difference. between investing and speculating. Investing means putting your money to work. Speculating means handing your money over to Lady Luck and hoping for the best. The middle class's tragic mistake is confusing these two things. They think they're being smart and sophisticated. They're actually gambling with their family's future. Now you might be thinking, okay, Charlie, no cars, no insurance, no gold. But what about professional money managers? Surely they can beat the market for me. Oh boy, let me tell you about the biggest scam in financial history. The fourth fake asset I refuse to touch. And I consider this one of the greatest scams in the history of finance, is high-fee actively managed funds. Now, this might sound counterintuitive. You are thinking, Charlie isn't giving my money to professionals. The smart thing to do, they have MBAs, they have PhDs, they have complex algorithms, and traders watching screens 24 divided by 7. They should beat the market, right? Wrong, dead wrong. This is exactly what Wall Street wants you to believe. It is how they make. Here is why these funds are fake assets. They don't help you make money. Instead, they quietly drain your blood through something called management fees. Let me show you some simple math that will make you angry. Say you invest in an actively managed fund with a 2% annual management fee. Doesn't sound like much, right? Just 2%. But here is what nobody tells you. Compound interest works both ways. It can compound your gains, but it can also compound your losses. If you hold this fund for 30 years, which is what you should be doing if you are investing for retirement, how much of your total returns does the 2% annual fee eat up? You might guess 10%, maybe 20%. The shocking answer, nearly 50% of your final wealth. Think about what that means. You saved the money, you took all the market risk, you endured all the volatility, all the crashes, all the sleepless nights, but the fund manager sitting in his air-conditioned office, taking 3 martini lunches, he takes half your money. Even if he did everything wrong, even if he underperformed the market, that is not financial planning. That is legalized robbery. But it gets worse, much worse. The vast majority of these actively managed funds can't even beat the market over the long term. The data over 10 to 20 year periods, more than 90% of professional fund managers underperform a simple S&P 500 index fund, 90%. Why, if they're so smart, with all their resources, why can't they beat the market? Because they're too clever for their own good. They trade frequently, racking up transaction costs and tax bills. They try to time the market. They try to pick winners. And they're wrong more often than they're right. And here is the real kicker. Their interests don't align with yours. A fund manager's goal isn't to make you rich. His goal is to make the fund bigger, so he can collect more management fees, even if he loses your money. And many of them do. He still collects every penny of those fees. Heads he wins, tails you lose. There is a famous story called, "Where are the customers' yachts?" A client is visiting New York's financial district. His advisor is showing him around, and they go down to the harbor. The advisor points and says, "See that yacht that belongs to the banker? That one over there. That is the fund manager's yacht. And that massive one at the end, that is the hedge fund manager's." The client thinks for a moment and asks, "Where are the customers' yachts?" The customers don't have yachts. The customers bought those yachts. At Berkshire Hathaway, we either invest money ourselves or we put it in ultra-low cost index funds. We never hand our money to these expensive, mediocre middlemen. And I mean never for ordinary people. The best strategy is embarrassingly simple. Admit you can't beat the market. Then buy the entire market. Buy an ultra, low-cost index fund. I am talking fees of 0.03% or less. They exist. Vanguard offers them. Fidelity offers them. When you eliminate that 2% vampire and replace it with a 0.03% fee, that extra 1.97% compounds into a fortune. Over your lifetime, don't believe the financial advisor who tells you about his proprietary system or his ability to beat the market. If he really had a secret formula, he wouldn't be wasting time selling you products. He'd be on a beach somewhere, rich as Croesus. Here is a rule to live by in investing. Simpler is almost always better. Complexity means traps. Complexity means fees. Complexity means someone's making money off you. You want to own assets directly, not through 5 layers of middlemen, who each take their cut. Every layer of middlemen is like a parasite. By the time the money reaches you, there is nothing left. This fourth fake asset exploits your worship of credentialed experts. It turns you into the bottom rung of the financial food chain. Now, there is one more fake asset we need to discuss, and this one is going to upset the conservative investors out there, but it needs to be said. The fifth fake asset I refuse to touch, or at least refuse to make a primary allocation, is long-term bonds and excessive cash hoarding. Now the conservative investors are panicking. Charlie, bonds are safe. Government bonds are risk-free. Cash is king. Yes, nominally they're risk-free. If you buy a $100 government bond, the government will give you back $100. But in terms of actual purchasing power, in terms of what that money can buy, they're wealth destroyers. I call this kind of investment guaranteed poverty, because there are two invisible thieves stealing from you every single day: inflation and taxes. Let's do the math. You buy a long-term bond yielding 4%. Sounds decent, right? Better than a savings account. But inflation is running at 3%. That means 3/4 of your 4% return is already gone. Then the IRS shows up. That 4% interest is taxable income. If you are in a high tax bracket, and if you are reading this, you probably are, you could be paying 40% or 50% in combined federal and state taxes. After inflation and taxes, your real return is negative. You think you are making money. Your purchasing power is actually shrinking. It is like running on a reverse escalator. You are running hard. You are not falling. You feel safe. But when you stop and look around, you realize you've been moving backward the entire time. This is the trap of bonds and cash. They give you a false sense of security. You look at your bank statement. The number hasn't gone down. You feel calm. But what you can actually buy with that money, groceries, gas, healthcare, housing, is getting less and less every year. The real risk isn't market volatility. The real risk is permanent loss of purchasing power. I've seen cautious middle-class people who are terrified of stock market swings. I can't handle the volatility, Charlie. I just want to preserve my capital. So they stuff everything in CDs or government bonds. 30 years later, yes, they still have their original $100,000. But that $100,000, which could have bought a house 30 years ago, now buys a bathroom. It's that safety number that is slow financial suicide. I almost never hold long-term bonds. I almost never hoard massive amounts of cash unless I am waiting for an exceptional opportunity to deploy it. Why? Because holding bonds is essentially betting that the future will be worse. You are betting the economy won't grow. You are betting companies won't innovate. You are betting human progress will stop. That is an incredibly pessimistic bet. Holding quality stocks is betting that the future will be better. that humans will keep creating better products and services, that companies will keep generating, and history proves that optimists win. Over the past 100 years, through world wars, depressions, pandemics, everything, stocks have crushed bonds and cash. Why? Because companies are alive. They raise prices to combat inflation. They improve efficiency. They adapt. Bonds are dead. They promise you a fixed amount, and that is all you get. Not a penny more in an inflationary world. And we're always in an inflationary world. The biggest danger is holding paper money. That won't grow. If you want to be wealthy in retirement, you must own assets that ride on top of inflation, not assets that get trampled by it. So those are your 5 wealth killers: new cars, whole life insurance, gold and cryptocurrency, high-fee active funds, long-term bonds, and excessive cash. If you eliminate these from your financial life, you've plugged 90% of the holes in your bathtub. But now the question becomes, what do you buy? Now that we've eliminated all the fake assets, you are probably wondering, Charlie, where the hell am I supposed to put my money? The answer is simple, almost boring. Real wealth lives in one place: productive assets. What is a productive asset? Something that doesn't need you to feed it. Instead, it constantly produces fruit. The best example is ownership in excellent companies' stocks. When you buy a share of a great company, you are not buying a piece of paper. You are not buying a gambling chip. You are buying a slice of a real business. You don't need to show up to work. Thousands of that company's employees wake up every morning and work for you. They produce products, they sell services, they compete, they innovate, and at the end of the quarter, they send you a dividend check or they buy back shares, making your ownership more valuable. This is the beauty of capitalism. You don't need to be smarter than everyone else. You don't need to work harder than everyone else. You just need to own a piece of what smart, hardworking people are doing. Almost all my wealth comes from this. I own pieces of Coca-Cola. Every day, billions of people around the world buy Coke, and I get richer. I own See's candies. Every Valentine's Day, every Christmas, people buy chocolates, and I collect profits. This is fundamentally different from buying gold or Bitcoin. Buying gold means hoping someone dumber shows up. Buying stocks means hoping the company gets stronger. One is a zero-sum game, the other is a win-win game. But there is a huge psychological barrier here. Most people don't dare buy stocks, or they lose money in stocks because they lack one critical ability: owner thinking. They see themselves as gamblers, not as business owners. The stock drops 10% and they panic. I am losing money. I need to sell. But think about it this way. If you owned a physical store, would you sell it at half price just because you had a slow day? Of course not. You'd ask, is my product good? Is my service good? Are my fundamentals strong? If you own a truly great company, stock price drops are actually good news. Why? Because you can buy more shares at cheaper prices. You can own more of the future cash flow. This mindset shift from gambler to owner is more important than picking the right stock. Now, there is one other productive asset worth mentioning: rental real estate. But notice I said rental real estate. That generates positive cash flow. If the rent covers your mortgage, taxes, maintenance, and still leaves money left over every month, that is an asset. If you are subsidizing it from your paycheck, it is a liability, it is a fake asset. Unfortunately, in most cities today, rental properties fall into the latter category. The numbers don't work. So for most ordinary people, the simplest, most efficient, productive asset is the stock market. And you don't need to be a genius stock picker. Just admit your ignorance and buy a low-cost index fund. When you buy the S&P 500 index, you own pieces of America's 500 most powerful companies. You put Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, the world's smartest minds, to work for you. You don't need to do anything. Don't watch CNBC. Don't check your portfolio every day. Don't try to time the market. Just do one thing, hold patiently. Let time be your friend. Let compound interest be your slave. You would have wasted on fake assets and pour it here, even if it is just a few $1,000s a month. Over 10, 20, 30 years, that snowball gets enormous. You don't need to get rich overnight. You need to get rich slowly and surely. That is the real path to wealth. It is not sexy. It is not exciting. It is actually kind of boring, but it works. It lets your wealth grow while you sleep. It gives you dignity and freedom in retirement. Now for the final piece of wisdom. You now have the knowledge to spot fake assets. You know where to put your money instead. But before I let you go, I need to give you one final piece of advice. This is the highest wisdom I've accumulated in 99 years of living, making mistakes and studying human nature. The secret to getting rich isn't addition, it is subtraction. Most people spend their entire lives doing addition. They want more cars, bigger houses, more complex financial products, more impressive titles. They think owning more equals more happiness. The truth is the opposite. Every fake asset you own is a stone on your back. That luxury car needs maintenance, insurance, payments. That whole life policy needs premium payments. Those active funds need monitoring. They don't just drain your money. They drain your energy, your mental bandwidth, your freedom to maintain all this. You are forced to tolerate a job you hate, a boss you can't stand, missing your kids' soccer games. You think you own assets. Actually, the assets own you. What I am most proud of isn't how much money I've made. It is how much freedom I have. I never borrowed money, so I don't answer to banks. I don't buy complicated fake assets, so I don't stress over charts. I live simply, so I don't need to bend over backward to maintain my lifestyle. This freedom can't be bought with any car or watch. So if you want to get rich starting today, conduct a financial audit of your life. Use inversion. Don't ask how to make more money, ask how to stop losing money. Go home. Pull out your financial statements line by line, audit everything. Sell that luxury car, eating your cash flow. Buy a reliable used car, cancel that whole life policy. Get cheap term insurance, sell that gold and Bitcoin. That keeps you up at night. Dump those expensive active funds, buy index funds, clear out all the fake assets. You'll feel relief like you've never experienced. Like a drowning person, finally let go of the anchor and surface for air. Then take all that liberated money and pour it into real productive assets. This is what I mean when I say, if you don't do stupid things, you don't need to be too smart. You don't need high IQ. You don't need insider information. You don't need to predict the future. You just need to do two things: rationally avoid fake asset traps. Patiently hold excellent real assets. It sounds simple, but it is hard to do because you'll be lonely when everyone around you is showing off. New cars, you'll be driving a 10-year-old Honda. When they're talking about Bitcoin to the moon, you'll be quietly dollar cost, averaging into boring index funds. They'll think you are stupid, cheap, out of touch. But remember, you are the one who is awake. You are building a stone house. They're building a house of cards. When the storm comes, and trust me, it always comes, when recession hits, when bubbles pop, when reality returns, you'll watch their card houses collapse. and you'll be sitting safely in your stone house, probably richer than before. Then they'll understand. Then they'll see how important today's decision was. But by then, it'll be too late. For them, these 5 fake assets are the middle class's highway to poverty. Avoid them. And you've beaten 90% of people. The end of wealth isn't luxury, it is peace. True wealth isn't how many flashy things you own. True wealth is how much time you own, that nobody controls. It is the security you feel when you go to sleep at night. I am Charlie Munger. I've shared everything I know about avoiding financial ruin. I hope these lessons save you decades of detours and pain starting today. Subtract the fake assets, buy the real ones, then enjoy your free life.